Hello and welcome to Passing Priority. My name is Mike and today I have a viewer request. We've been requested to build the Dragon. The Dragon is a 9 mana 10/10 dragon avatar, and he has an ability that activates from the command zone. As long as he's in the command zone or on the battlefield, all our dragons cost 1 mana less to cast. He also has an ability when he's on the battlefield. When one or more dragons we control attacks, we draw that many cards, then we may place a permanent card from our hand onto the battlefield. The Dragon is a 5-colour commander, but to help us out, we're only going to focus on 3 of its colours, and view the other 2 colours as splash colours. This deck is a dragon tribal deck. This is going to help as most dragons are red or red and another colour. For our deck, we're going to build a Jund deck. That's a red, a green and a black deck. And we're going to use white and blue to just supplement those colours when we need to. But before I get started, if you would like a deck built around a commander or a deck idea for yourself, leave it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out. Let's start looking at our ramp for our dragons. Dragons are normally big expensive creatures, and while our commander does reduce their mana cost, we're still going to need a lot of mana to cast most of our dragons. Sol Ring is our only mana rock that does not produce coloured mana, but the 2 mana it gives us is going to be very helpful when casting our 6, 7 or even our 9-drop commander. We're running Arcane Signet and Command Sphere. Both will add any mana of our commander's colour identity, which is any colour. Command Sphere also has an additional utility. If we don't need a mana anymore, we can sack it to draw a card. Great if we're getting flooded on lands. Coalition Relic adds 1 mana of any colour, but if we don't use that mana this turn, we can tap instead and put a charge counter on it. And then at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, we remove all counters and we add 1 mana for each counter removed. This is a great way to store up some mana for the next turn. We're running Felwar Stone. This mana rock will on most occasions give us 1 mana of any colour, but this will depend on what our opponents are doing. And probably the best mana rock in this deck for us is Dragon's Horde. Dragon's Horde will add 1 mana of any colour we like, but when a dragon enters the battlefield, we'll get a gold counter, and we can remove those gold counters to draw cards. We're also running some green ramp effects. We're running Rampant Growth to go fetch a basic land out of our deck. Cultivate and Kadama's Reach do basically the same. They fetch a basic land out of our deck, onto the battlefield, and 1 into our hand. And we're running a single mana dork in Draconic Disciple, a creature that can tap to add a mana of any colour, but we can pay 7 and sack him to make a 5/5 dragon creature token. This is great if we draw it in the late game, where a mana dork may not be useful, but another 5/5 dragon will. We're also running some dragons that can help us get our mana fixed. Opportunist Dragon will help us by stealing an artifact from one of our opponents. In most cases, we're going to try and take one of their mana rocks. Hoarding Dragon, on enter the battlefield, will search our library for an artifact, and when it dies, we get to put that card into our hand. Rampacious Dragon, on entering the battlefield, will make 2 treasures. This will refund some of the mana spent to cast it, but we can also use it to fix our mana, if we don't have any blue or white mana. And one of our best dragons for helping with our mana is Goldspan Dragon. When Goldspan Dragon attacks or becomes the target of a spell, we get a treasure, and his other ability makes all our treasures tap for 2 mana instead of 1. This will help us ramp faster into our 9 mana commander. Another card worth mentioning is Sylvan Scrying. This will let us search our library for any land card and put it into our hand. This is not ramp, but amazing colour fixing. And most times we're going to want to grab the World Tree. In this deck, we're going to ignore the last line of text as we're not running a single god. However, it's its middle line of text. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any colour. This is our best source of colour fixing, as it turns all of our lands into command towers. Next, let's look at the draw options we have on our deck. First, let's start with some draw options that have a low ceiling but low drawbacks. We have Ambition's Cost, which will draw 3 and lose us 3 life. Painful Truths, most of the time we cast it, will also draw 3 and lose us 3 life, but for 1 less mana. And Read the Bones will only draw us 2 and lose us 2 life, but we'll also get to scry with it. We're also running some cards that care when dragons enter the battlefield. We're running Temur Ascendancy, which will not only give our creatures haste, but when a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under our control, we may draw a card. This is a large majority of our dragons. We're also running Garruk's Uprising. When it enters, if we control a 4-power creature, we'll draw a card, and then for each 4-power creature after that, we'll draw a card when they enter. It also has an additional upside of giving all our creatures trample. Some of our draw effects care about the creatures we have on the battlefields. Soul's Majesty will draw cards equal to the power of a target creature we control, and Rush of Knowledge will draw cards equal to the highest mana value among permanents we control. For these two cards, if we have a commander out, we're drawing 9 or 10 cards. We're also running Return of the Wild Speaker. We can draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-humans we control, or we can use it to pump all our non-humans by +3/+3. In our big beefy dragon deck, we might not be using that second ability too much, but the draw power will certainly be great. We're also running Momentous Fall. Momentous Fall does have the downside of sacrificing a creature, but if one of our dragons is becoming the target of a removal spell, we can cast this and sacrifice it in response, fizzling their removal and refilling our hand. We draw cards equal to its power and gain life equal to its toughness. We also have a couple of dragons that are going to help us draw cards as well. Dragon Mage, on dealing combat damage to a player, will have each player discarding their hand and drawing a new 7 cards. And Null Spine Dragon can be even more impactful. We'll once cast this in our second main phase, after we've gone to combat, and on enter the battlefield we may discard our hand and draw cards equal to the number of damage dealt to a target opponent this turn. If we swing at opponent and deal combat damage with 2 of our dragons, we're easily going to go above 7 cards. Let's discuss some of our removal options. We're running Earthquake and Magma Quake. These are great cards as we can pay any amount of mana into them, and even better as they won't hit any of our creatures with flying. We also have a dragon that does similar. Rusei the Falling Star, on death, will deal 5 damage to each creature without flying. Steel Hellkite is also a great dragon removal spell. After he's dealt combat damage to a player, we can pay X and destroy each non-land permanent that player controls with mana value X. We can only do this once a turn, but this is a great card to keep token decks at bay. We can pay 0 mana and destroy all tokens on the battlefield they control. But one of our best pieces of mass removal is Crux of Fate. We can choose one. We can destroy all dragons, or we can destroy all non-dragons. And it won't take long to work out which mode we're going to be picking. We're also running some single target removal. We're running Go to the Throat, which will destroy a non-artifact creature. And Golgari Charm is versatile, as we can use it to regenerate our creatures or destroy an enchantment. Immerstrum Predator is a great bit of graveyard hate. When he becomes tapped, most likely because we're attacking, we can exile a target card from a graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on him. This means each combat he will grow in power and dwindle our opponent's graveyards. We're also running some dragon-based damage removal. Drakuseth, Maw of Flame, on attack will deal 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to 2 targets. That's 10 damage we'll get to distribute around the board. Whenever Scourge or Valkus or another dragon enters the battlefield, we can deal X damage to any target, where X is the number of dragons we control. While this ability may only provide 2 or 3 damage, this will help us take out any small flying creatures our opponents have that block our army. We're also running Spit Flame. Spit Flame will deal 4 damage to a creature, but whenever a dragon enters we can pay red, and if we do, we return Split Flame to our hand. But that's our deck set up, so let's talk about the fun parts. We want our dragons to come down hard and come down swinging, so we want to give our dragons haste. We've already mentioned Temur Ascendancy, a card that not only draws us cards, but gives our dragons haste. But we have some other ways to do that. We're running Dragon Tempest. Whenever a creature with flying enters under our control, it gains haste. This will give haste to all our dragons. And whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under our control, it will deal X damage to any target, where X is the number of dragons we control. This effect is very similar to the Scourge of Valkus. We're running Rhythm of the Wild. This will not only make all our creature spells uncounterable, but all our non-token creatures will riot as they enter the battlefield. This means they can choose haste or a +1/+1 counter. I've included Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath is an enchantment that can give an enchanted creature haste, and for 1 red mana, give it fire breathing. And when a creature with a mana value of 6 or higher enters the battlefield, we may return Dragon's Breath from our graveyard and attach it to that creature. This is a great way to give our commander haste, as most people will forget it sits on our graveyard until we cast our commander. And one other way to give our dragons haste is with Karthus, the Tyrant of Jund. On enter the battlefield, we'll gain control of all dragons and untap them. This will be great, as there are many dragons leading commander decks, and with the new Elder Dragons coming from Strixhaven, we're going to see a rise in those soon. It'll also give all our other dragons haste. If we want to fill our board with even more dragons, we can create some dragon tokens. Verex's Bladewing is one of our cheap dragons we can cast early on. But if we draw it later, we can kick it as we cast it, and he can bring his brother, Karok's Bladewing, into the battlefield with him. And to go along with the King of Dragons, we'll bring Lathless, the Dragon Queen. When another non-token dragon enters the battlefield, we make a 5/5 dragon token. She also has an activated ability for 1 and a red, and she'll pump all of our dragons by +1/+0. And whenever our dragons attack, Udvara Hellkite will make sure we get an additional 6/6 dragon for each one attacking. And in case that wasn't enough, we're running Skyline Despot. When he enters, we'll introduce the Monarch into the game, which means that if we have the Monarchy at the end of the turn, we'll draw an additional card. And if we don't, we can attack the opponent who is the Monarch and can take it back. And at the beginning of our upkeep, if we are the Monarch, we'll make a 5/5 dragon creature token. Our dragons are big and scary, and we don't want to give our opponents too long to answer them. One of the easiest ways to reduce the amount of time they have is to take some extra combats. Whenever Scourge of the Throne attacks, if it attacks a player with the most or tied to the most life, we get to untap all our attacking creatures and we get an additional combat step. And our dragon deck wouldn't be complete without the combination of Savage Ventmaw and Hellkite Charger. On attack, Savage Ventmaw will give us 6 mana, 3 red and 3 green. And then we only need to add 1 more mana to that to feed into our Hellkite Charger, because for 7 mana, we can untap all our attacking creatures, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. While this isn't perfect, it means that we only have to pay 1 mana with these 2 on the battlefield to have as many combats as we like. But our dragons will get removed, so let's look at some ways to get them back. Bladewing the Risen, on enter the battlefield, will return another dragon from our graveyard to the battlefield. He also has an ability of paying black and a red, and he will pump all our dragons by +1/+1. Fearsome Awakening will return a creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield, and if it's a dragon, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Our dragons are already big, but more big is more better. In our mana base, we're running Haven of the Spirit Dragon, which not only being able to tap for a mana of any colour to cast a dragon, we can pay 2 and sack it, and return a dragon card from our graveyard to our hand. And Boneyard Scourge, after seeing the death of a dragon, we can pay 1 and a black and return him to the battlefield. But we haven't discussed our commander. We have some cards that greatly support him. 9 mana is a lot of mana, but Hellkite Courier lets us cheat it for just a single turn. When Hellkite Courier enters the battlefield, we may take our Ur-Dragon from the command zone and put him onto the battlefield with haste. He will go back to the command zone at the end of turn, but the surprise from our opponents of having the Ur-Dragon swing sooner than they expected is great. Also running some great cards that we can cheat out with him. Terror of Mount Velas on enter the battlefield will give all our creatures double strike. With our 10 power commander, this is scary to a lot of players, as it's only 1 extra point to kill them with commander damage. And I've also included Favour of the Mighty. While a tribal enchantment for giants will give each creature with the highest mana value protection from all colours. Odds are there aren't going to be many players running creatures with a higher mana value than 9. And possibly my favourite thing to cheat out with the Ur-Dragon is going to be Runes of the Deus. Runes of the Deus will enchant our Ur-Dragon. Because he is both red and green, we'll get both effects. He'll gain +1/+1 and trample, but more importantly, gain +1/+1 and double strike. This will take him to a 12 power double striking commander, which means in 1 combat we will kill an opponent with commander damage. And to help protect our commander, we're running a great little instant in Not of This World. Not of This World will counter a spell or ability that targets a permanent we control, but if that permanent is a creature with power 7 or greater, we can cast it for free. This will be a lovely surprise, as completely tapped out we can still protect our commander from removal. And there we have it, an Ur-Dragon deck. And a link to the deck list can be found in the description below. Thank you for our viewer to suggesting building this. Personally, this made me go back and take apart my Dragon deck and rebuild it, as it's been a couple of years since it's been updated. And again, if you would like us to build a deck for you, put it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss it when the deck comes out. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Okay, note to editing me. I need to go back and put this in somewhere. Okay.